it's about helping people and helping our neighborhood. So again, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here with you tonight.
Great. Counselor, thank you very much. Let's turn this over, if we can, to Captain Fong. Captain, you want to do your regular thing and tell us how we're doing?
Sure, Mark. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not going to go too deep into the COVID issues. I know the mayor will be speaking on that. But as far as some of the issues we've had, just kind of some of the big picture stuff in the department, we've had about 100 officers that have been infected, and but many recovered. We had one officer that did pass away due to COVID-19, so that's been a little bit of a challenge for us. But overall, we're doing well now. Officers, we have plenty of personal protective equipment. We're staggering shifts for distancing. We're cleaning cruisers regularly, and all sorts of other equipment, and prisoners also. So one thing that we did start relatively recently, we're distributing surgical masks now to people out on the street. So as everybody knows, there's a mask requirement in the state. And we're focusing on education, not on enforcement. We're not looking to issue any violations or citations or anything like that. And we are distributing masks to people that either don't have them or may need them. And so, our focus has been a lot on some of the elderly homes and elderly housing and things like that, and also on some of the homeless people and just other people generally that might be out in the street that aren't aware of some of the requirements or may have forgotten a mask or something like that. So the curfew advisory is still in effect, so that runs from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we're just reminding people about maintaining their distance, social distance, wearing face coverings, and their personal hygiene. Summer events are canceled, so I know that's going to affect a lot of things down in the Wharf district as far as on the Greenway and things like that. So that's going to be, it's going to be not our usual summer, that's for sure. And offices open, office space opens in Boston on June 1st with a 25% capacity. So we're basically preparing for kind of things to kick back up. Homeless is where we've seen a little bit of an increase, and also among the homeless population, we've seen over 700 homeless have tested positive for COVID-19 in the city. And that's been a challenge. We're trying to get them help. A lot of facilities have been opened up to assist them. And, part of the problem is that they've been asked to leave. They can't stay in restaurants or, like the McDonald's and Burger Kings and things like that, Starbucks. So, everyone's kind of out in the street. On the crime side, we're doing pretty well. Calls to service are down. Part 1 crimes are down citywide by 3%, and down in the district by 12%. And really the only crime stuff we've had in the Wharf district over the past 2 months has been some commercial break-ins on the overnights. And we did have a break-in at the Panera Bread where a homeless woman was going through the trash and eating bread inside the Panera, so that's the kind of stuff we've been getting. So overall, crime-wise, public safety things have been going well. DPD is doing well. We haven't had any major issues in the Wharf district, and we're here and ready for you. And if anybody needs any surgical masks or any equipment like that, please reach out to me. We're pretty well stocked on things, and we're looking to help people out that might not have access to any personal protective equipment. Thank you, Mark. Any questions? I'd be happy to take them.
I don't see any questions at the moment, but Captain, thank you very much, and thank you for taking care of these things, us all in these odd times, and please be safe.
Thank you, Mark.
Jesse, we're going to move to you, and I think I make you a host so that you can share with us some images that you'd like to. Is that correct?
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Flynn and Councillor Asabi George. We have 2 of our board members, I think, on the phone here, both Suzanne as well as John Shea, who's on our board, and former board member Chris Fincham. Also, thanks to so many of you, to Ricky from the bid and to Captain Fong for our partnership with the police, and to so many of you who are volunteers and supporters. Suzanne asked me to talk to you about how to use the Greenway, using the Greenway now and in the future. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Can you?
You may want to do it on
Yeah.
This
Now,
one.
can you see it full screen?
Yep.
Great. Great. As Captain Fong talked about, the first thing to say is please use the Greenway, but please maintain physical distance. We have been seeing people respectfully using the park. Of course, there are some who have not been. Our park rangers are talking to them and encouraging them to separate. The other part is do wear a face mask. Again, people have been compliant. This is me being compliant.
Who is that masked man?
And our staff is out there working. I mentioned our rangers, our maintenance and horticulture staff are out there as well. So if you are passing by, say hello. Here they are, they're actually wearing masks that were hand sewn by our public art curator, Lucas. So he continues to do great work for us in multiple ways. He was, when he got his master's in fine arts, he was a fibers major. So nobody better. Perhaps on the other side of this, we will sell these as souvenirs, as a fundraiser. But we're doing park cleanups. I don't know whether this is a more beautiful spring than most or whether I'm just paying more attention, but do take a walk out there. Over the last 10 years, we've planted nearly 200,000 bulbs on the Greenway. And so while there aren't some of the things on the Greenway to see that there would be in other years, the horticulture is looking beautiful. We see many people walking their dogs. We please ask you to clean up after your dog. We are seeing somewhat less compliance with this than usual. So please curb your dog, pick up after your dog, but do come out with your dog. We love seeing you. I mentioned the horticulture is looking great out there. Come out and enjoy it. We have 3 public art installations on view currently. On the left is Fern Dye's A Mouse with Ears and Tail. This is the Year of the Mouse in the Lunar New Year, and the latest in our installations to celebrate the Lunar New Year. On the right is Juan Treviso's Engulf, a mural that is in the Leather District Chinatown area. If you've not seen it, go check it out. And earlier, the picture of me with the mask was in front of Super A's mural Resonance. We will be bringing 2 other artworks out this year. We will have somewhat less art in the park this year. It is challenging economic times and we've had to make some difficult decisions, but really excited. We have 2 pieces. We haven't announced them yet, but one really big name artist, you may have seen his work at the ICA recently, and another artist who has not exhibited in Boston before, was from the Southwest, a Mexican-American artist. So come out, check out the art. Also, our augmented reality installation that we put out last year that contains both historic photos as well as digital artworks is still on view in the park. We also have turned it on so that you can view it from your own home. If you're not getting out in the park, if you can't visit, you download the free app Hoverlay, and there is in the park the Greenway channel, and at home the Bring the Greenway Home channel that allows you to see these digital artworks and the historic photographs on your device. We have been working closely with our food trucks and our other small business partners, and we are hopeful that they will be able to start coming back. They are allowed to operate, but there hasn't been the business that has made this profitable for them. The food trucks are something that people love, and these are small businesses that are suffering. Many of them, like the other restaurants, are I think on the edge of solvency. We've already heard that a couple will probably not be coming back at all. We have forgiven rent for them for the last 2 months, which is a hit to us, but there is no getting blood from a stone. And, it is important that this industry, which is so popular and so well associated with the Greenway and feeds people great food, is there on the other side of this crisis. And so we're working closely with them. We hope that some trucks will start coming back out in June as we start reopening. And I'd strongly encourage you to patronize them. I think we've all seen how takeout food is a good way to break up the monotony of all that's going on now. And so please go out, get something to eat, and support these small businesses, these entrepreneurs. The Boston Public Market is bringing the farmers market back, another example of supporting small local businesses. The market has been closed in their physical location, but they have had a small farmers market, some of their vendors operating in front of the market up in the North End. We expect the farmers market to come back to Dewey Square starting probably just at the beginning of June. There have been clear operating guidelines for farmers markets out already, so that was not a new announcement with the governor's announcement. And so BPM has been able to internalize those and operate for a while and operate safely. If you have not seen, growing research on coronavirus suggests that almost no transmissions have been occurring outdoors. And I don't want to present myself as a public health expert. I'm very much not. And of course, people should be careful in the park, and they should be washing their hands and wearing face coverings and so on, as I started with. But relatively, outdoors is a good place to be, and we encourage you to come out and enjoy it. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your physical health. And supporting these businesses is key. Under discussion and are so many of the other things that we've all enjoyed on the Greenway in the past, and we will be working with the city Parks Department, with permitting agencies, and so on the right time to turn on the fountains. Clearly, they are an attraction that can be a gathering place. They also are, for so many people from beyond just the neighborhood here, a key part of summer and a way to stay cool in the heat. And so it appears, as we're digesting the guidelines, that park spray showers are in phase 2. This is not a waterborne disease, and so we will be working closely and trying to bring the fountains back. The Carousel, I think, will be a balance of trying to bring it back safely in public health terms, and also starting it back up when there actually is demand for it to operate, because it is a business in some ways as well. And so if there aren't tourists coming out of Faneuil Hall, we'll have to sort of balance when that comes back. And the beer gardens, clearly that is a major gathering, and what that will and can look like, we'll continue to think about. The Carousel and the beer gardens are important sources of revenue, like the food trucks to the Conservancy. They're also important parts of what summer looks like in Boston. And so we hope that they can come back. But we will only do that if we can do it and be compliant and be safe and assure that people can have a good time. I mentioned before, bring the Greenway home. We have a bunch of resources on our website that are fun. In addition to the AR, we have a Color the Greenway campaign. Some of the pages from our Carousel coloring book are available for download. We've worked with a number of the artists that we've had in past years to turn their old drawings into coloring book pages, and to take, on the left is the blank mural. So there's a presentation that is sort of draw your own and send us your mural. Here are the past examples. lot of interesting video content and blog content. So if you haven't checked it out online, in between binge watching on Netflix, learn a little bit about the Greenway and our efforts. And, it is obviously a challenging financial and economic climate for so many people. And I will move quickly on from this, but we are a nonprofit. And as we try to keep our staff together and as we try to continue delivering great things to the neighborhood, we hope you'll consider purchasing a Mother's Walk paver or sponsoring a bench or making a gift to the Conservancy. And so with that, happy to take any questions. Thank you again to all of you for being such great supporters.
Jesse, thank you very much for sharing that. And it is a true treasure that you care for in our front or backyard, depending upon how you look at it. And we do really appreciate that. I did not have a chance to say welcome to Councilor Asabi George. Thank you very much for for joining us. I wanted to allow you to say hello if you wanted to, but I didn't somehow.
I'll give a quick hello. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Hi to everyone. I'm Anissa Asabi George. I've got you on the headset, so I'm not interrupting the room with another meeting. Just want to say hello. Hope everyone's well. Some of you I know, but I'm at-large City Councilor Anissa Asabi George. And Councilor Flynn, who spoke before, probably referenced I tuned in as he was finishing up his remarks. But he may have mentioned that while the city's working on sort of the pandemic response and this sort of next phase of this crisis, we're also in the midst of our city's budget process, which is about 30 hearings that everyone is welcome to tune into. Also give public testimony if interested. I'm also a small business owner. That's where I happen to be coming from in my spare moments. I'm making cloth washable, reversible masks. So if anyone is in need of a mask, I'm making them, and it's we're asking for a $5 donation to an organization called the Winter Walk, which supports programs working to end homelessness in our city and beyond. So that's the plug for me. I've already put in the chat box my contact information, my email, and my cell phone if anyone's got comments. City Hall, City Council offices are technically closed, but we're all accessible. You've got my cell phone. We're also checking voicemail from the office throughout the day. So everyone be well. I'm here if you do have questions. Otherwise, I'll just continue tuning in and continuing with my work.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Councilor. And Councilor Flaherty is with us as well. The mayor is expected shortly, I understand, but if you want to say hello to anyone, please feel free.
Thank you, Mark. Councilor Flaherty here. Just great to join you guys. And as mentioned by my two colleagues, we're at it every day. The mayor is on a call with us every morning, just going over all the details as to what's happening. It's been very helpful and informative as a citywide city council to have that type of access, but also in real time being able to solve some of these issues that are popping up across the city. So glad to see your organization meeting. I think that's important, making sure that we know what's going on and identifying ways where we can be helpful. So We've got a great district council, but both Councilor Asabi George and I work in concert with Ed and on behalf of the mayor. So appreciate the opportunity to say hello, and feel free to call me, 617-635-4205. And again, we're full steam ahead despite the pandemic, and I'm more in the hand sanitizer and the latex glove side of the house. So I know Anissa has been making the masks. Ed and I have been working together, delivering some of those provisions and supplies to some of our nursing homes who have been really ravaged across the city. So it's the demographic, it's our seniors, and it's our more vulnerable residents that are really taking the brunt of this in terms of not only the positive COVID-19s, but also the death side of it. So, we're closing in on about 12,000 folks, I think, and we're about a little over 580 folks have passed away in Boston. So serious issue. We need to obviously be cognizant of that, but as we start to talk about opening up everyone just needs to continue to do their part, make sure that they're wearing the mask and doing the social distancing, and also making sure they're washing hands and sanitizing and wiping down. So that's going to be an important piece of this. And our hope is that it won't boomerang and come back. But if it does, we want to make sure that we're prepared. And if there's anyone on this line that knows anybody that does not have a healthcare provider and/or primary care physician, now is the time to encourage them to sign up for some form of healthcare, Mass Health, anything, and get a primary care. That's going to help our hospitals in our community health centers in the long run. One, because you'll get that good quality treatment, but and access to healthcare. But two, it's reimbursable care. A lot of our hospitals and our community health centers are going to be hemorrhaging, and when this is done, and that will be a big help to them. So that's it from me, and I appreciate the art, and look forward to kind of getting things back open and getting outdoors and getting down to see folks at the appropriate time when it's safe. Thanks, Mark, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Rick Domino, if you don't mind, the possibility that you might be interrupted when the mayor comes, if you would like to go ahead and tell us a little bit about what your, the mayor is on, I understand. All right, now, how do I find the mayor to be able to let him, let's see. There we go. Let's see. And the mayor can, Mayor, is your microphone now on? Maybe not. All right. I'm trying to find you amongst all these folks here that are on. Haven't done this yet.
Mark, this is Jesse.
Yeah.
I see the mayor.
Oh, there we go.
He does not appear to be muted.
Yeah, doesn't look like it. We're not getting audio from the mayor at the moment, nor video.
Hey guys, it's Steve Vilkus with the North End Waterfront. On my end, the mayor does appear to be muted.
All right, well, let's see. Let me try something different here. I apologize to everyone. That's embarrassing. I just don't, on in a few minutes, it says. He's wrapping up an interview. Okay, so I think he's not actually on yet, so he's coming on. Let me come back here to Ricky and all right, Rick, why don't you, if you would like to to talk a little bit until the mayor comes on. Oh, there's the mayor. There we go.
Oh, I was muted.
There we go. Apologies. Mayor, welcome to the Wharf District Council's Zoom meeting, and we are delighted to have you and very much appreciate your telling us how it's going to be better soon.
Oh, God, I wish I could. Well, first of all, thanks, Mark, for having me on. I want to thank, good to see Captain Fong on, all the elected officials, all the community groups. There's a lot of people on this call, so
yeah.
It's great to see you all. Thank you. I could recap. I'm used to giving numbers and things like that. Let me talk about how it's going to be better soon. I think that as we continue to move forward here, a lot of reopening needs to be, in my opinion, slow and steady. I think we have to be careful on not moving too fast. I think that we have to rely on data, and I think that we can't have public health versus the economy. It can't be a fight between both. It has to be jointly carried out. We have to base our decisions on public health and public safety. At the end of the day, it's about keeping people safe. Right now in Boston, we have 10,050 cases of coronavirus that have happened since the beginning. 12,000, excuse me. 588 people have lost their life in the city of Boston. We are the third most densely populated city in America, major city behind New York and San Francisco. So when we think about making decisions, it's going to be based on making sure we keep people safe. We've made a lot of progress on testing. Testing has become a priority of ours now. I don't know if Marty Martinez is on the call, but we're working on making sure that we can continue to expand testing in our neighborhoods. We have opened over 20 testing sites in the city of Boston. We're going to continue to expand testing. The governor's phase one approach yesterday, as we go through it, you all know what it is now at this point, what the phase one is, but it's construction, it's manufacturing, it's offices. The offices won't open in Boston until the 1st of June. I asked for that delay just because we're working on protocol to get to all the office buildings, so they put in good protocol. The number calls for up to 25% of occupancy in the buildings, which means that we don't have to start with 25% on day one, and I don't think we should here in the city of Boston. I think we should be very careful as we move forward. The couple of that they did yesterday, and this isn't necessarily, this is not a direct conflict with the state, but the House of Worship, we're getting a lot of feedback from House of Worship that are concerned about opening, and I made a statement today at my press conference basically saying that you don't have to open if you don't want to open, and I encourage people that are 65 and older and seniors not to go back to church necessarily and speak to the pastors or the different leaders of the religious order they're part of to make sure that they're not put in risky situations. So we're going to be working with our faith-based community in that effort. And barbershops and hair salons also can open next week on the 25th. And there's really strong regulations around those two areas. I think some of our barbershops and salons probably won't open in the city next week because they can't meet the standards that have been put in front of them right now. And we're going to offer them some technical support as we move forward there. We also have pet grooming that's going to be opening next week, and also car washes. I believe it's self-serving car washes. So the first kind of set of businesses, I wouldn't necessarily say they're controversial. I think most of them you can control a lot of making sure there's safety procedures in place. But I think as we move forward, we really have to use data and information to make informed decisions moving forward. I know Chris Osgood's on the phone, and one of the things with the offices is that 25% of several 100,000 people that work in our offices is a lot of people to go on the MBTA. So I think that trying to encourage businesses to allow people to work from home is really important. I think it's also important to encourage businesses that have folks that are an older workforce or have pre-existing health conditions to be able to work from home as well. I think that that's going to be key, at least for the first couple of months here, as far as we move forward here. I'm jumping around a bit because I just jumped off a call. I was on CNN. So let me take questions if you have questions for us. How's that? And I want to let me just thank a few people while we're doing it. I want to thank Eddie Flynn, who's been Eddie Flynn, myself, Anissa Sabi George. I'm not sure if any other councilors are on the call, but we've been on a call every morning going over the response to COVID-19. I want to thank them for their support and what they've been able to do. Michael Farady's on the phone as well.
Yes,
Thank you for that. I also want to thank the legislative leaders. Your state representative, Aaron Mikowitz, has been very helpful to us here in the city of Boston as we navigate through different piece of legislation at the State House. And our congressional delegation has been leading the country, both our congressional delegation and our senators have been leading the country in getting responses for the CARES Act, the first act that came down. And then the Congress passed the $3 trillion CARES Act. I'm not sure what it's going to look like in the Senate, but it's been very helpful to help us in some of the unfunded mandated programs that we have right now. So with that, I'll take questions. Mark, do you want to read them or you want me to read them out of the chat?
Well, whatever's good for you. The first question really that I saw had to do with what the plans are for the opening of hotels and also of restaurants. And if you wouldn't mind addressing that, that'd be great.
Hotels, restaurants are going to be in phase 2. And we're working right now. The state, I literally got informed 3 minutes ago that the state is putting together a working group that we're going to put somebody on it to be specific and dive into the details. We're going to send somebody on from Special Services from our department that's going to be on there. There's going to be somebody from the ABCC, the licensing board, and there's going to be people from the industry that's going to work through that to come up with some plans and procedures on how to open restaurants. If you look at what happened in New Hampshire yesterday, they opened restaurants, but they opened outdoor seating only. I personally don't think that's going to work in Boston. I think that we have to open up, when we open restaurants, I'm not sure what the capacity is going to be inside, but we have to allow restaurants the opportunity to open up inside, number one. Number two, we're also, Chris Osgood is exploring the idea of looking at how do we create some outdoor dining for restaurants that might not have it, so that then we know they're not going to open up at 100% capacity. They potentially could open at 50% capacity. And if they do, what happens with the other 50%? And if we can create opportunities for them outside somewhere, that would be something that I would be interested in working with them on. That number 50% is I'm making that up, by the way. There's been different feelings about people, 50% capacity, 25% capacity, 6 feet apart. They haven't settled on any number. So I think it's really important for us as we think about our restaurants, making sure they come back safe. I don't think there's appetite right now that I don't think our restaurants, when they open up in a month from now, if it is a month from now, I don't think you'll see bars opening up. I don't think you'll see the bar opening up. It'll be turned all into restaurants for now. And I think that will be in a later phase. Our hospitality industry, unfortunately, I think is in phase 4. If I'm not correct, am I wrong there, Chris? I mean, as far as hotels? Or Stephen, is it phase 2? Okay, 2. Also that's another industry that we want to see successful. I think there's a 2-prong approach to restaurants and hotels. I think number one, there's a way of opening them and make sure they're safe, but also we have to do a little bit of marketing program to the public to let people know it's safe to go back in. Because if people feel that they can stay overnight at a hotel or go out to dinner in a restaurant, they're gonna have the confidence that they feel safe in there. And I think that as we move forward, it's going to have to be backed up by data. I think data is going to be key. And I think as we open these first phases, having an understanding of how they went, I think will really help us educate us on how we do phase 2.
I see a note from Chris Osgood talking about the willingness to work with a number of our members who are interested in having outside dining in places where perhaps the sidewalks are not all that wide, and maybe it involves absorbing some parking area or adjacent to the sidewalk or something like that. But I do think that operators are going to want to be able to have their restaurants serving people, even if not inside. So if that's something that your administration can help with, I'm sure that many of our members would appreciate that.
Mark, we're also working on curbside retail can start next week. So we are going to be dedicating parking spaces in front of these retailers, places that will no longer be parking spaces, at least short term, so that we can have people safely go pick up and take off. There's no real big need for parking right now. Traffic is pretty much to a standstill. So we are going to be working, not so much in your area, but other areas of the city of Boston might feel losing parking spaces. But we really have to try and help our retailers as they get back on their feet.
Yeah, there's another question on tourism-related industries, and I think you can see that, perhaps sightseeing operations, so forth.
Tourism is clearly, I'm pulling up now. Tourism is obviously, I'm looking at a lot of people on this, Jesse from the Greenway, tourists come up from all over Boston and walk our Greenway. We have Stephen at the hotel. Obviously, we have our restaurants that people use. Rick from the aquarium. A lot of people use these different places. I don't have an answer yet on tourism. I think that tourism, I don't think we'll see tourism back in the city of Boston anywhere near the capacity until probably a year from now, what it was. And I think that it probably won't be till the fall where we start seeing tourists coming back. I think if we can successfully open our colleges and universities and have parents coming in from around the country, we might see some tourism starting to creep back here. But I think we're a bit away from tourism. I don't have a real good answer on that right now. I don't know if one of my team wants to jump in. Chris, I know you're working on some policies. I don't know if that's come up in the conversation. I don't know if you want to jump in a minute on this.
Sure. So as the mayor said, we are trying to think creatively about how we're using our streets. And it looks like, Matthew, your question was really about parking fees on Saturdays that we might be able to use to be able to encourage people to come back downtown. Is that correct? Great. So again, feel free to reach out, and that goes again to anybody on this call. We're happy to work with you. The mayor's made it very clear that we want to figure out the right way to be able to work with communities like the Wharf District Council and beyond to help us have both a healthy reopening and a really equitable, thriving recovery.
I think that in our industry, particularly in not just in the Wharf District, but other parts of town, but those of us who attractions, museums, retailers, I think that we already have free parking on Sundays, and just as a temporary measure to allow free parking on Saturdays, we're mainly going to be depending on the drive-in market for many of these tourism businesses, and I'd just like to raise that as a suggestion. I think it's would be worth looking at to help usually tourism-related businesses. I think a lot of folks in Boston are going to be eager to get out and do things as long as all of us are practicing the safety guidelines. So I just want to put that out there as a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you for that. And make sure any suggestions you have. I mean, there's no suggestion that is beyond potential. And I think that anything that you have, I mean, that makes sense today, obviously. And I think that as we put these plans together, so just so everyone understands, so the state is doing the advisory board, and people are going and presenting there. But also in the city, we're digging into down into different plans for different industries and areas. So do not hesitate to give us an opinion. Nothing, even if you think this is a kind of off the wall opinion, who would ever have thought that we're thinking of shutting sidewalks down and creating sidewalks into restaurants and turning lanes of streets into sidewalks? I mean, that would never be, in Boston, we'd have to have, 3,052 community meetings about that. And now we're thinking about, let's make it happen. So I think if there's any time that there's an idea that you want to bounce off us, regardless how big or small, please do it, because everything is on the table.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mark, just read them off because I can't get into my chat.
There was a comment about temporary waiver. Oh, that's from Matthew. And then another one about the challenge of balancing potential loss of residential parking, permit parking for outside seating. So, and the desire to engage the community groups. That may in fact go against what you just said.
Let me just address, I mean, there might be a loss of residential parking a little bit. I mean, and I think that, just for a little while, it's a short period of time. I mean, we're going to look at every neighborhood and see how it works. But I mean, that's what we have to balance, the keeping our main streets alive and our restaurants from shutting down where there's empty spaces in our buildings or having parking spaces. And I think that, I think that I mean, we'll work that through in different neighborhoods, but I think that that's something that we might have to look at. I mean, other cities have done it and done it successfully. And I just think that, I'm not to discredit the old way of thinking, but I think right now when we think about the environment we're in today, we should be thinking outside the box a little bit. I don't want to make it inconvenience for families and people, but I think it's important that we think about how do we help businesses as well in this situation.
Absolutely. Two questions, one on plans for July 4th and the future of baseball.
July 4th, from what I understand, the BSO already canceled it for the most part. They're going to do a virtual. They're going to do a virtual concert. I don't know. I can't speak to fireworks. I'm assuming they're not on. But I think because if you bring fireworks in, then people are going to want to see them by the waterfront. And I still think we're going to be very much in the beginning of making sure that we're going to be making sure people are safe. Number one, and number two. Hold on a second. Something wrong? Sorry. And number two, baseball. The Red Sox are working on a plan right now with Major League Baseball to potentially have baseball without fans in the stands. I think the Korean Baseball League has shown that they can do that. So they're going to be working on that. And then also, I think the Bruins and Celtics are trying to make, I think NBA and NHL is trying to salvage their season as well. So I'd love to see sports come back. Those of us that are, there's only so much we can watch. I was interviewed the other day. I watched the Bruins 70 Stanley Cup. I watched the 81 Celtics Sixers. That was pretty fun, but I know what the outcomes of those games. I don't want to watch the 87 World Championship anymore with the Lakers. I'm sick of looking at the loss. If we just could get those shots back, we could win the game, but it's not going to happen. So now it's time for new memories. Absolutely. Those of us that are sports fanatics, and those of you not sports fanatics, I make a recommendation. Ozark, if you haven't watched Ozark yet, the hype is good. It's a good show. I'm in season 3, so don't put anything anywhere. Season 3, I just watched the 5th episode last night, so I have 5 left, and it's pretty intense and it's pretty incredible. So I watched 2 of them last night. There's Anissa Asabi George. Are you asking me a question about youth sports? Where is it at? I think it's in phase 3 of the governor's plan. I think phase 2 potentially is like running drills and stuff like that. But again, I think everything youth minus youth jobs is a very fluid situation right now.
I was saying youth sports, that's where it's at.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. I'm a former Little League coach, man. You know, I coach my expos, so I missed that.
Question, I think, from Rick Domino about preliminary thinking on office guidelines.
Rick, we're putting that together now. So if you have any input and ideas, get it to Chris. We're going to basically, I think, take the template we did for construction and think it through. We're going to be looking at like how many people are going to be in an elevator, maybe temperature checks, things like that. 6-foot distancing inside offices, and think we're going to be putting all like we did for construction in a lot of ways. But even City Hall, we're looking at this. How do we open it? Right now, if you come into City Hall, you're going to be asked a series of questions about your health. They're going to take your temperature with the temperature radar gun there, and then you'll be allowed in. You're only allowed in by appointment only. So I think a lot of those guidelines will probably be instituted in our office building guidelines as well. And we're also going to ask people to do kind of split shifts and staggering start times, because it's not 9 to 5. That 9 o'clock everyone leaves the building and goes on the trains. Can we kind of stagger it? Maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock start, and then stagger going home maybe 3:30, 4, 5, 6, so that we can kind of get that down.
Right. Chris, my firm has spent a lot of time working on those issues too, so if we can help in any way, let me know.
No, Mark, that'd be great.
There's a question about outdoor beer gardens.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't really speak to that one yet. I know that that's going to be talked about. I know it's not a bar per se, and you might be able to have social distancing. So I don't know what I don't have an answer from my teams from working on. I don't know if that's come up in conversation, Chris, in any of your working groups.
I don't have a date on that or a phase on that at this point, but happy to loop back on that with you, Austin.
Yeah, we have one. I have one right outside City Hall here that usually is open by now, and then I look across the street. Sam Adams has an indoor kind of beer garden type of thing, and they put a lot of time and money into that, and they just opened, in the fall, I think, and I think they were excited about the summer, and right now it's just there's nobody there.
Can you tell us about your thoughts about school, back to school?
Back to school for grade school, we're working on some plans now. It's not official, but I don't think summer school is going to happen in person. And we're trying to figure out how do we pull off summer school. And we're waiting for guidelines from DESE. DESE's working on it. The Department of Education and Department of Secondary, whatever it's called. They're working on it right now, along with our superintendents on a task force there. I'm hoping school opens in September. I wouldn't say it's 100% right now. Just because of, I think we're still going to be in the middle of COVID. We did, I want to digress for a second. We did that study that you all heard about, the antibody study. And what the antibody study told us was that about 10% of the body, a little more than 10% of the Boston population either has COVID or has had COVID or has antibodies, which means that there are about 600,000 people in Boston that have not come in contact with COVID-19 or antibodies potentially. And the way we get through this is 3 ways. Number one is by basically self-isolating so the virus has no place to spread and just dies. Number 2, we get a vaccine. Or number 3, we get herd immunity. Herd immunity is roughly 70% of the population. So I think that we're looking at potentially, that's a way off potential hope for us. That would mean that many people would have to get COVID-19. So we're kind of hoping for a vaccine. So it really is going to be incumbent upon, if we start school up, how do we keep our kids safe? How do we allow them to social distance, but also get educated? And can we get our teachers into our schools? And so we're working on those plans right now. And it's not just Boston, it's all schools, private, parochial, public.
I was on a call earlier this morning with Boys and Girls Club of Boston, and they, of course, have the same deep concerns about how they're going to manage through this.
Yeah, summer camps go into that category as well.
Yeah.
And I think the state is waiting on CDC guidelines, from what I understand. The CDC is going to put some guidelines out in the coming weeks, and we're going to look at those very closely to see how we open them. And there's mixed commentary on pools. People have said that, COVID, the coronavirus doesn't like chlorine, but there's no 100%. I haven't heard 100% guarantee that does the trick. So again, our pools and our sprinkler parks and stuff like that over summer. So there's a lot of challenges heading our way because of the weather, because of heat, and particularly with some of our low-income families. What do we do?
So does that do fitness centers fall into that same category? There's a question about that.
Yeah, fitness centers right now, I think they're phase 2 or 3, Chris?
Sorry, just checking right now. I'll put it in the chat.
Fitness centers right now they're not in phase 1, so they can't open. There is one rogue fitness center out in the western part of the state that's open, is defying the governor's order, and I think that that can be very dangerous, because of the sweat and just the makeup of fitness centers. And I think that if I were advising people, I'd advise you, if your fitness centers are open, I advise you not to go into it right now, unless it's your own home fitness center.
Suzanne has a note here to thank you and everything that your team has been doing for the Wharf District. There's another question, which we all echo. Thank you for what you do for the city and for keeping us all safe and for keeping us informed. It's really, you've been above and beyond. It's really been great. What can you tell us about the colleges?
Colleges, I had a call today with the community colleges. We had, colleges in Boston, the community colleges are faced a little differently than the other colleges. From what I understand, BC, they put a statement out today that I think is in the Globe. I didn't read it yet. They're going to open in March. Notre Dame, I think, said they're going to open 3 weeks before BC opens. But I think colleges have a bit of a way to go. We've been having constant conversation with them. There's many different challenges that they have to be faced with. Number one is faced with kids coming from all over the country to their schools, kids coming from all over the world potentially to their schools. So they're looking at proper safety protocol to be put in place. They're looking at doing testing of all their students, of their faculty. They're concerned about the MBTA as well. They're also working on potential isolation dorms that when kids test positive for COVID, they can be isolated on campus, maybe in a dorm or renting hotels. So I think that conversation is still very fluid here in Boston and Massachusetts. And I think that you're going to have a lot of inconsistencies in the beginning of the school year on how they're going to operate. The community schools today was a little more understood that they could actually do some learning, virtual learning, and maybe bring in smaller groups. I think that the one thing that's going to have to happen in colleges is that all of their labs are going to have to open to some degree because a lot of the students that are nursing students and doctor students, they need lab time. And if they don't have the lab time, they can't graduate. So I think you'll have a mixture of some schools trying to open all the way up and some schools doing remote online learning. But there's no consistent plan yet. The one thing about the COVID conversation is that literally the conversation changes week to week. By this time next week, we'll be in a very different place as far as moving forward and looking to move forward. So I think that that's still a fluid conversation.
Mayor, I apologize. I missed a question here. Any sense for when the public project review process for the BPDA will restart?
No, we don't have that yet. I think that we ran a kind of a pilot program last week with the ZBA. Thursday night, we had the small projects that were reviewed in pretty much not controversial projects. As of right now, I'm just not comfortable with doing large scale projects online. I want to make sure people can have their voices heard. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen because the longer we go in the process, then we can't just stop approval processes. But right now, I think there has been some meetings online, but when we get to the large project review and approval, we have to try and figure a process out here. It hasn't affected us yet. I know projects want to move forward and want to get moving, but we've kind of, I don't want to say we've stalled them, but we've basically put some of them on hold a little bit. There has been meetings, virtual meetings, but I think I'm not ready yet to go to full virtual online approval processes for big projects. I just think that it's complicated, and I don't want to see people's voices be locked out of that process. Chris, anything else you want to add to that one?
No, that we are, as the mayor said, trying to think through all those elements of engagement and really appreciate, obviously, forums like this to be able to connect and thinking about what other ways we might be able to do that with some of our processes going forward.
Right. Chris and Mr. Mayor, we had a wonderful presentation at our last meeting about the Northern Avenue Bridge.
Yes.
It's actually very exciting. Would you want to share any thoughts with us about how you think about that?
Yeah, I'm just excited about the bridge. I mean, it's my thinking on it has evolved. I think Joanne and Suzanne and other people have got me. You know, I was originally going to cars on it both ways and all this stuff. People have worn me down, and every time I look at the design, I'm like, what a shame to put any vehicles on that thing. I think we definitely have to have you know, emergency vehicles and maybe buses just going one way, just to ease the tension in the South Boston waterfront. But I'll tell you, it's going to be an absolute magnificent connection between the South Boston waterfront and the Wharf district. I think it's going to be amazing. The bridge has really evolved. I think it's evolved. I mean, every time I get a new rendering of it, I love it. A lot of pedestrian foot traffic, a lot of opportunity, reconnecting Boston in the way that the Greenway reconnected, you know, the financial district to your side of the street, if you will, or many of your side of the street. And I think that it's going to be great. I see Rick Domino smiling down there. I think he's smiling. You know, so it's something that I really want to happen. I know the process is moving forward, and we're going to continue to move it forward. I don't have a timeline on it yet. You know, unfortunately, the timelines keeps getting pushed out a bit for different various reasons. But we're committed to making it happen. So I appreciate that. That's all I have on that right now. I know that Chris has put tremendous amount of time in that. Chris Osgood and his team has done an amazing job. So I want to thank Chris and Kyle Tangle and some other folks. And
Chris,
thank you, community.
We'll just note that I think on this call alone, we have 5 members of the mayor's advisory task force on the Northern Avenue Bridge. We have Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, Suzanne Lavoie, who the mayor mentioned, Rick Domino, who is our co-chair, and Kathy Abbott from Boston Harbor Now. There may be others that we're missing, but that input really helped us shape the bridge. So I really appreciate everybody's feedback. And it was great to be able to have a community meeting with you back on April 30th. Really appreciate the feedback then as well.
That's great. And Chris, I think you had mentioned the fact that there is a way to pay for this so that we can think of it as being realistic.
Yep. So the mayor has allocated funding in the capital budget for the Northern Avenue Bridge. As Councilor Flynn sort of mentioned in his opening comments, we're in the budget cycle right now. I would also note that there is funding the mayor has allocated for State Street, which is another project that we'll be coming back to you and presenting to the Wharf District on, knowing what an important corridor that is for this bridge.
Wonderful.
Also, I'm open to federal help in January, so we'll see what happens.
Wonderful. Great. Well, it's a very exciting project, and it's amazing the transformation in the design over the period of the discussion, and a really terrific progress. There's a question here from Joanne about your current feelings about climate resiliency. And
I thank you for the question. In this time of COVID, in the last 2.5 months, we've had 2 C40 Zoom calls with mayors from around the world to talk about climate resiliency and building it into the reopening plans. And we intend on staying very focused on that here in the city. We've talked to Chris Cook a couple times and in the Environment Department, and I think that this couple positives that might come out of Corona, if there's anything, is the emphasis on really working on our plans and moving forward in a very quick way. And I think that this is going to give us an opportunity to incorporate climate resiliency in all our plans, number one, obviously. And then also I've had the chance to talk to other mayors around the world, how they're doing it as far as reopening. It seems like that the centerpiece of a lot of their reopening is climate resiliency. So we've been excited about that.
Great. Mayor, I hope you had a chance to see the video that we put together with the Wharf District's vision for taking your leadership in climate resilience and applying it to our region. So if you haven't, I hope you do, because it's put a lot of time and effort into it, and we think you'd be pleased with the way that worked out.
Thank you.
Let's see. Are you considering additional on-street accommodations for biking?
We are. I'm going to turn this over to Chris. We're looking at some maybe short-term improvements right now. When I say improvements, temporary, as we're thinking about not taking parking space away from people, but expanding outdoor dining. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to expand bus and biking opportunity. So I'm going to have Chris jump on that one.
Exactly as the mayor said, we want to find a way to be able to have more people feel comfortable biking, connecting to jobs, connecting to parks, connecting to health centers across our city. So we're looking at some corridors right now, including some potential corridors that connect to the Wharf District, and expect to be reviewing some of those actually over the week or weeks ahead as we head into this recovery phase.
Thanks, wonderful. Another question about vote by mail and your thoughts about the election process.
Yeah, I testified at the State House about that. I didn't testify at the State House, on Zoom last Thursday. I'm hoping the legislature acts on that quickly on mail-in voting, and also our election department is taking some precautions right now. September is going to be primary month, primary day. A lot of our polling locations are in schools, so we'll be fine in September if school opens. In November, we're looking at maybe creating a one-day holiday so that we can have safe voting in our schools, so our kids don't have exposure to people that might come in with COVID. Those that don't vote. We're also supporting early vote for primaries in the final this year, and extending the time on that so we can have more people doing more of that. We're also looking at, we're reaching out to our senior buildings around the city of Boston to make sure that they're okay with us having polling locations. And I think, you're not the precinct that has a super precinct, is it? It's on the other side of the bridge. We're looking at re-precincting some of the city as well. It's not this year, but after the census comes in. And while I'm talking about the census, please, everyone, fill out your census form. Boston is below the national average. When you think about the fact that we're below the national average, that's a problem if the national government's beating us. So just make sure if you get a chance to go online and fill out the census form, I'd appreciate that.
How would you say we should be thinking about this issue of voting by mail in the national elections?
I mean, I think that I think there's two ways of thinking about it. One is there's going to be you make a request and you get a ballot that you want to vote by mail, and it should be basically no excuses, meaning that right now, if you want to vote absentee, you have to have a reason to vote absentee. You're either sick or out of the state. I think in this particular case, it should be just being an application should be sent to you to fill out an application to get a ballot sent to you. That's how I like to see it happen.
Great. Thanks.
No, for all intents and purposes, COVID's still going to be here.
Other questions from anybody? There's one. Let's see. Can you talk about the role of Boston Medical Center and Boston Hope during the crisis? Yeah,
Boston Medical Center has been very big contributor to helping us here. Two things there. One is that they have allowed us to use the East Newton Street Pavilion campus to help us with the homeless population for COVID positive homeless people. And they've been a great partner in that. And they also were instrumental in us creating Boston Hope along with the Partners Healthcare System, where we created 1,000 beds, 500 what's called respite beds for our homeless population, and 500 hospital beds. To date, that collectively, I think it's about 800 patients have gone through Boston Hope. We currently have 70, I think as of this morning, 75 on the hospital side and 12 on the respite side. So it definitely helped us with burden and hospital capacity over the last 7 or 8 weeks. That hospital was built up and running in 5 days. New York, not that we're competitive, but New York took them about 2 weeks to build out what they did. We did ours in 5 days. So it's been amazing. And hopefully we're going to have a conversation with the state over the course of the next couple of days. I would suggest we keep it, even though we might not be using it for patients, I would suggest we keep it up and build right now while we go through this next phase here, in case there's a second surge to ease hospital capacity.
Mayor, thank you very much for joining us. I know that Councilor Wu joined us at the last moment to also hear and perhaps she'll have some questions for or statements for us afterwards. But it's really an honor to have you joining us and a comfort to have your leadership. So we really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And on behalf of myself and all the councilors and the elected officials, I want to say thank you. You're a great neighborhood, great organization. And I wish I was there in person. We will be there in person soon. But thank you for all that you do.
Great. Thank you again.
Appreciate it.
Councilor, thank you very much for joining us. Anything you'd like to say as we move on to our next presentation by Rick Domino?
No, I don't want to take too long. I know you have a packed agenda, so just wanted to say hello, and I apologize for being late. We're trying to juggle kids and school and a few other meetings, so I'm grateful for the fact that you continue to come together to build community in this uncertain time, and my office is here, and we're eager to help support along with all my colleagues who are on the call. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Rick, are you still on? I think you are. And are you able to share with us some of what you've been working on lately? And you are currently muted, so if you want to unmute yourself.
Sure. Absolutely, Mark. And I obviously am very grateful for the mayor and his comments and his leadership. And I've worked closely as Suzanne and other members of the Northern Avenue Bridge Task Force, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, and other councilors, of course, that have been very helpful in those discussions, and also many of the discussions that we work on in the Better City. But relative to the Northern Avenue Bridge, I'll just quickly start there. I just wanted to mention that the task force and our elected officials worked very hard on shaping that idea, but the mayor ultimately helped us establish a real visionary, iconic bridge. And I know, Mark, you and I talked a lot about that. God bless you as your architectural juices flowed. I think that Chris and the mayor really, together with the support of our city councilors, really, and the mayor, really helped shape a visionary bridge, one that will really stand out and help not only connect two very important parts of the city and the communities of those two sides of the bridge, but also be a destination bridge. And, you know, and as mayor said, I worked very closely with Chris on a wide range of things, but him and his public works team and the consultants really created a public realm strategy that will make that bridge a destination. Not only will it have the functional responsibilities of carrying pedestrians and bikes and transit, but it will also have the responsibility of actually being a place where people from the neighborhood and our Wharf District residents will enjoy, but also Seaport residents will enjoy, but visitors will enjoy as well. So it was a very difficult assignment, but you know, for all of those that participated in the community, we ultimately got to a great place because of all of the leadership of the mayor and our city councilors, as well as the team at Public Works and Chris Osgood. So I thank you all for that. And I know that, Mark, you asked me to talk about a Better Cities work regarding reopening and transportation, but I couldn't help myself, being the chair of the Northern Avenue Bridge Task Force, that I at least say a few words of that. And if I didn't have white hair from that process, it would have increased my white hair percentage. And again, many of you on this call I've had a chance to work with, and of course, you know, how fortunate are we to have, you know, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Sabi George, and Councilor Wu being part of the team with the mayor to help represent us. You know, I've gotten to be involved with government, being the former commissioner, but our current elected officials are really servicing us well. And you know, I'm very fortunate to be able to work with all of them, as is this Wharf District Council. And again, Suzanne, you know that I'm, and Bob and many of you, a founding member of the Wharf District Council. And happy to say that, happy to have helped create it. A Better City has a number of major corporations and major tenants and hotel establishments. I see Stephen there, that are part of our membership and part of our organization. Of course, Eric at the aquarium. We're very pleased to be part of this organization. And again, Mark and Suzanne, thank you so much for your leadership. We greatly appreciate it. And I would be remiss, creating a business improvement district that is directly related to supporting the Greenway and the Conservancy. I got to give the mayor and the governor a lot of credit. It was a great idea. We were responsible for pulling it together, so we got it done, thank God. But Jesse and the Conservancy helped us get it done together with our city councilors. The city councilors that are on this line, they helped us get unanimous support for creating a business district on the Greenway. And I don't know if that's unprecedented, but we were pleased to get that kind of support. And Jesse was a great leader during that process. So I just wanted to mention that and thank the councilors and Jesse's for helping us, and of course the mayor, in creating a business improvement district, because without their help, we would have not been able to get it done. So we represent about 60 contributors along the Greenway alignment associated with that. And of course, the rest of our membership is Greater Boston urban core based and represent the economic engines of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So with that, the mayor mentioned a number of things relative to reopening. Of course, we're grateful for his leadership. But some of the things that we're working on in a better city relate to the questions around, for example, we have a number of people in the construction industry and the people in the development community and the architectural and engineering community on our board. So they were very much interested in construction and how construction might take place safely in the city of Boston. And I have to give both the governor and the mayor lots of credit, but I also want to thank the mayor and the construction community for working together on this notion of safety and site plans needing to be approved before construction begins. And I want to say that, and also in terms of organized labor, the construction industry actually leaned in together with our elected officials during the process of shaping construction guidelines. And they weren't shy about saying, yeah, we need to be safe. And this is a case where the construction industry and organized labor came together and agreed on protocols regarding how construction can take place and safety of the construction site can actually, and it was a collaboration, I guess I'll say. Tom Nally, who you know has been representing us at A Better City here on the task force, got to participate in a number of these phone calls. It was a collaboration that I think really rose to the occasion. People put their differences aside, and my hope is that as a result of the genuine interest of the construction workforce, the construction community, and our guidance from the governor and mayor's office, as well as our city councilors, will lead to outcomes that will really help significantly create environments within those construction zones that have a chance to be safe. There's documents that have numbers of 60 pages of guidelines that have come from the construction community and the associations that represent the construction community. I know you, Mark, you're familiar with them. So they did a lot of work on detailing this, and I'm pleased that the mayor also kind of is demanding that these sites, as they reopen, submit these plans. And I know that Chris is also working on specific guidelines for accessing these construction sites that will also need to be followed. And I wanted to mention that piece of the puzzle and the thorough nature of which that's being considered and being examined. And I know there was a lot of anxiety about getting construction workers back, but I actually think the mayor, and please don't tell my members that I'm saying this, was right in making sure that that we actually gave that process the time that it warranted. And I think, again, we were seeing a lot of proactive interest. And the other side of this, again, the construction industry during the early stages of this crisis, if you know someone that's a construction industry leader, please say thank you. They basically turned over their PPE equipment to the hospitals. Interestingly enough, while the construction was starting in some parts of the state, they were actually short of supply because of what they did to help the hospitals. And so I think that's another important point, is that nobody's being shy of kind of stepping up regarding their responsibility during this time period. And I know Eric, White from the Boston Society of Architects has been a great leader during this time. And Mark, I got to be on the BSA board for a number of years as a planner. They stepped up, the architectural community stepping up. So anyway, I get a chance to every once in a while talk to you all as my neighborhood colleagues and friends. And I just wanted to share the context of what's going on in the construction community and give you a sense of the importance that all those stakeholders are taking into consideration to shape that next step regarding construction. So the other part of the work that we do obviously relates to major tenants, major building owners, and office space. And again, you can imagine that the tenant community and the tenant leadership and building owners have been, and Mark, again, you're aware of this because of your role as an architect, and we've talked about this a bit, have been taking serious steps to think about re-entry plans. And we're looking, some of our members have global offices, and unfortunately, or fortunately, relative to the learning curve, we've learned quickly about what those offices have had to do in Asia and other parts of Europe. So they're taking the lessons learned and applying them here in Boston. In a strange sort of way, the office environment relative to what needs to be done is going to actually, and the office guidelines and requirements are going to actually help the transportation system in the early stages. What do I mean by that? I know that the mayor and probably our councils are considering what the percentage of occupancy should be. Well, building owners and their brokerage firms and the leasing agents and tenants have been thinking about that exact question too. And there's going to be limits that they're going to be imposing, and we're already thinking about imposing on their buildings right out of the gate. And it's related to actually the requirements of distancing and safe building spaces. So, of course, you all heard about the discussions regarding lobby space and elevators. So as soon as you start thinking about that relationship to a building, you start thinking about the occupancy of a building being much less than what it's allowed to carry. Because you can only, and believe it or not, office buildings are going to actually target spaces where tenants can come in. So hypothetically, if you're a law firm, you're going to be given a time span between, I'm going to say 9:30 or 9:45, where your employees can come into that space. So you might have a capacity constraint of 20% in a building, depending on what the city decides, or I know the governor has set it at 25%. But then you're going to actually see office buildings stagger when people come into those spaces. You're going to see employers stagger when people come in. We're talking about staggered work hours. We're also talking about staggered work weeks. So people that normally work Monday through Friday may work Tuesday to Sunday. You're going to see, I should have mentioned this right out of the gate, major employers, and I know this is a privilege, we have to think about equity issues associated with this, and I know our counselors think about this all the time, rightfully so, that major employers, by and large, are going to be directing a good portion of their workforce to be working from home. Working from home is going to be a major ingredient, and there's a lot of reasons why that's going to happen. First of all, companies have found working from home is actually leaning in on productivity. Second of all, a lot of our workers, whether they're Boston residents or state residents, will need access to some form of childcare. That childcare still is in question. They need to take care of their kids, or they need to take care of their elderly loved ones. In that instance, they can't go to work, especially if there's no alternative plan for that type of home care and home education. So you and a lot of the workforce is still anxious and will be anxious. So we have members that have said, we're not considering changing our work from home strategy until the fall. We're not considering changing our working from home strategy until the end of the year. And so if you combine these office space capacity constraints, these staggered access hours to office buildings, and working from home, all of that are actually active ingredients in some ways that have nothing to do with transportation, but are actually going to reduce the demand on transportation. Now, the one difficult part of the transportation characteristic is that you might have read in the Globe that there was an 18% population of a Globe survey that said that they would be interested in using the T. That means that 82% of those that were surveyed say they're not interested in using the T. That's because of public confidence and trust regarding the safety of the T, which is a reasonable concern associated with transit access. I'll get back to that in a second. But that could mean that whatever the percentage of office employees or retail and restaurant employees that are allowed to come in may be using their car. And that will change the relationship to parking characteristics regarding off-street and on-street parking. I do want to flag that we were already listed as the #1 congestion city in the country. However, I want to also flag, because of the actual demand and capacity constraints of the office space, and the fact that lots of people will still be working from home, I don't want you to necessarily think that people using their car in the early stages of this are going to put us back in the #1 ranking of congestion. And the reason why I don't want you to think that, there will be congestion, but it won't be as bad as it was, because the total number of workers coming into the workplace is going to be less. Now, there will be some of those workers, again, that will have to use transit. And our councilors know, and our mayor knows, and Chris knows, that we have a very significant transit-dependent population in Boston. So that transit-dependent population that relates to the healthcare and home and nursing homes and assisted living facilities, that essential working population that's transit dependent, the transit system has already been providing service to. And I got to thank the leadership of the T and the frontline workers of the T for being there over these last 2 months for that essential workforce. Now, admittedly, they had some fits and starts and some issues, and they still have some issues today. But the good news is that they showed a way to be flexible and nimble during the early stages of serving that community. And what do I mean by that? And again, our councilors are well aware of this, as well as the mayor. They adjusted in East Boston. They adjusted in Chelsea. They added bus routes where they saw overcrowding. They did have some overcrowding in the beginning of this. They are still, on some of the Silver Line routes and some of our bus routes, still experiencing some overcrowding. But I have to say that without them being there for those essential workers and those transit-dependent riders that serve our health, that we would have been in real trouble. The other phenomenon that's gone on during this first 2 months, believe it or not, is the healthcare industry, and this is true about every aspect of the healthcare. Some of them have shifted to bike use. That's why I'm so glad that Chris is thinking about pop-up bike lanes. We saw a big increase, and in fact, we had to facilitate some crazy stuff to get the hospitals to get access to those blue bikes, because that was a safe way to get to work. And that will still be, I think, an important aspect. I know it will be an important aspect of our transportation system while we're still being with the pandemic. And the mayor and Chris went through a number of the things that the city of Boston's thinking about in terms of turning back our streets and looking at pedestrians and bus stops, and Chris offering more space to both pedestrians that are walking and also pedestrians that are queuing. Queuing in transit is one of the challenges. The transit vehicles themselves are one of the challenges regarding social distancing. I know Chris is fully aware of this. We happen to do a full-fledged study on what it will take to get the T to think about the next phase of its reopening. And I'll just speak a few more minutes about that, Mark, and then I'll finish because I know we've kept people late. We've made sure in our objectives, and why is transit so important to us in a better city? Well, because if transit isn't operating with safety as being its #1 priority right now, and doesn't take steps to ensure the safety of both current riders and the next phase of riders, we may see further erosion of transit use, a decline in the trust and confidence of transit, and therefore not see transit become kind of a building modal shift, meaning not see more people using transit as the economy opens more because of the prolonged concerns and real outcomes of safety issues. That will undermine transit, then undermine our economy. In theory, I'm supposed to relate to the relationship to our members in the economy. Of course, I'm most importantly concerned about safety. So safety of the workers and safety of the riders have to be the first priority. Restoring public trust and confidence in the transit system has to be our second priority. Ultimately, gradually increasing the ridership of the T has to be our third priority. And then how does that relate to obviously the greenhouse gas issues associated with vehicle use? And then finally, how do we make sure that transit system is serving the equity needs of our city and our region while it's coming back online? Those things are the key issues that we helped identify. So 3 pieces of that, obviously, disinfecting, PPE equipment for the workers, testing of workers, many safeguards regarding the workers. The T is already facing some concerns regarding absenteeism. There's been 1 fatality associated with a T worker. We also have seen T workers being affected by the coronavirus. We need to make sure that those workers are being well cared for from a safety standpoint. And of course, that has to go hand in hand with the riders. So disinfection's key, PPE equipment, face masks. I have to tell you that the governor ordered face masks. That was a great order. And we are seeing more and more compliance of people that are using the T wearing face masks. We need to think about how the T can complement its relationship to supporting face masks in the next phase of its reopening. I suggested that they maybe have customer service representatives or inspectors at stations, and maybe in the early stages offer some free masks so people know that that's what they're supposed to be doing, and they're being proactive about that. It's called assisted compliance. We're not pushing for strong enforcement. We'd like to see complementary ways to help guide people to do this. We're also wanting to see, and we really got detailed about this, capacity targets and physical distancing being part of the T's plan. So disinfecting, face masks, and physical distancing has to be part of the plan. And we offered a number of recommendations and actually showed drawings and how that can be done. So we're hopeful as the T details its plan. And right now they just laid out kind of a generic approach to how it might phase service. I'm a little bit concerned that they're not going to start full service sooner in that plan, because full service means more opportunities for distancing on their vehicles. And so I'm pushing hard on that. But I do think that they need to have a detailed plan regarding safety, regarding the next reopening of this plan. And that's what we've been encouraging. And we're certainly hopeful that that happens. I'll finish there, Mark, and I hope I answered all the questions that addressed some of the questions that you already.
Well, you have, and Rick, I have to say you have been involved in so many really, really important things, both recently and over your long and illustrious career, that have been to enormous benefit to all of us. And really thank you for your dedication and your effort and for your ongoing involvement in these issues that we're just in the midst of right now. And I know there are a lot of questions that we all would love to have answered and for which there are not currently answers, but thank you for continuing to work on that.
Happy to do it, Mark, and happy to talk to all of you.
Yeah. Suzanne, anything else that you would like to add before we close? I presume we will do our next meeting on Zoom as well next month. Suzanne? No. I presume we will do our next meeting on video. As we look to next month, we'll get that information out to you. Erin is about to have a baby, and next time we are all together, we expect to know the name of the little one. But wish you best of luck, and everyone else. Let's see. I tried to unmute Joanne, but I mean Suzanne, but still muted. Look forward to seeing you all next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you.